Today we're kicking off a new series, entitled Stewardship, a Principal Interest. And today we're looking at the concept of faith, how faith interacts and intersects with stewardship. For those of you that may be watching at home, we're having technical difficulties today, so we do not have the title available to you, but just make note of that is the title of the message, or the message series rather, Stewardship, a Principal Interest. And the title of the message, I'll give that now, is The Financial Faith Factor. The Financial Faith Factor. And to get ready, we're going to be looking at the Gospels, the Gospel of Mark chapter 6, verses 30 to 44. Again, that's Mark chapter 6, verses 30 to 44. That's where we'll be looking. But before we get to the scripture today, I want to see if I could see a show of hands of those of you that are here. How many of you have ever flown, either for a vacation or a business trip? And how many? Oh, I see lots of hands there. Most of you. So, well, that's interesting. But let me point out that actually, I would venture to say that you guys really didn't literally fly there as in fly yourselves, because as far as I know, none of you have wings, right? No. So you didn't fly there like a bird, on the strength of a bird. You probably went on an airplane. But even then, did you fly the airplane to the place that you were going? Did you go into the cockpit and start flipping the levers and pushing the buttons and doing whatever you need to do to get that plane off the ground? I would venture to say, no, you probably didn't. Is there anyone in here that's a pilot? I knew it. I didn't think we had any pilots here. So what you probably did was you bought a ticket, you went to the airport, you boarded the plane, you sat down, and then you let somebody else, the pilot and the co-pilot, get you to where you needed to go. You let them do the actual flying, or the operating of the plane, I should say. In other words, you did what you could do, and then you let someone else do what you couldn't do. Now, where can we go with that? Well, let me tell you something. To do that, you have to have faith in someone else. You have to have faith, if you're going to fly in an airplane, faith in the pilot, faith in the machine itself, right? And I would like us to hold on to that thought, because that's going to be key today as we talk about the financial faith factor, okay? Now, here's what you need to know regarding this series, Stewardship, a Principal Interest. Stewardship, properly defined as this, listen to this now, the responsible overseeing and protection of something considered worth caring for and preserving, all right? Now, you and I are stewards of lots of different things. If you drove here in a car today, whether you own that car or you're leasing it from a car company or renting it, you are the steward right now. You're the one who's in charge of caring for and preserving that car. And the list goes on with your house or your apartment that you're renting, or this or that or the other thing. Now, in God's economy, what we have to understand is this, is that everything that we have, and I do mean everything, ultimately belongs to God. Psalm 24 and verse 1 clearly states, "The earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof." That means the earth belongs to the Lord and everything that is in it. So where do we come in? Well, we have been entrusted to care for that, to watch over that, to preserve it according to God's will. That's biblical stewardship. When you recognize everything is God, and what we have been entrusted with, we need to do a good job for God and do it according to His will. So today, believe it or not, we are going to be looking at a classical story from the scriptures, from the book of Mark. And we wouldn't have to look at it just in the book of Mark. This is the story of the feeding of the 5,000, which is the only miracle other than the resurrection of Jesus Christ that appears in all four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This is in all four of them. Isn't that incredible? And what this famous and very important story, if you will, reminds us of is that if we are going to follow God's principles of stewardship, we're going to have faith. Faith in God, faith in the principles, faith in what He's telling us to do. And when we do that, that's the key to unlocking a lot of other things to be a good, faithful steward to God. So as we mentioned earlier, but we'll say it again, the scripture passage, if you have a bulletin, it's in Mark chapter 6, verses 30 to 44. Again, for those of you later on that may be listening at home, Mark chapter 6, verses 30 to 44. And we invite those of you that are present with us to find it in your own Bibles or call it up on an app on your phone. If you'd like to use one of our pew Bibles, this passage can be found on page 1001. 1001. Mark chapter 6, and we'll begin at verse 30. Verse 30 begins this way. The apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they ran there on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. Oh boy. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And when it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the hour is now late. Send them away to go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat?" And he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go and see." And when they had found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then he commanded them to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups by hundreds and by 50s, and taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces of the fish. And of the fish. Broken pieces, meaning of the bread and of the fish. I beg your pardon. And those who ate the loaves were 5,000 men. And there ends the lesson. So the disciples are faced with quite a challenge, these followers of Jesus. I mean, they're pumped up because, you see, they were just sent out in the previous story to go out and minister like on their own. All right, Jesus sent the 12 apostles out. We shouldn't be surprised by that because the word apostle, do you know what that means? It means one who is sent out. These guys were sent out, and they come back, and oh, do they have a lot to gab about with the Lord. But Jesus realizes that they need some rest. So in verse 31, he says, "Just come with me, and we'll go somewhere to a quiet, deserted place where there's nobody else, and we'll get some rest." You see, a lot of people have been coming and going, and the disciples didn't have time to eat, so they're hungry, and they're all peopled out. Some people who are introverted especially get more peopled out than others that are extroverted. Being that they were hungry and needed to get away from people, I wonder if they maybe had that attitude that we use today called, were they hangry? You know, where you're hungry and angry. I don't know, it doesn't say they were angry, but you wonder, especially the ones that were really introverted. We don't know. So verse 32, they get into a boat and they go somewhere all by themselves. But, oh boy, no rest for the weary. In verse 33, people see him going and they recognize him. Look, it's them. And so they start running on foot and they show up at this supposed quiet, deserted place ahead of the disciples and Jesus. How do you like that? Especially when you're just trying to get a break. So what does Jesus do? Does he get out of the boat in verse 34 and go crab at them and tell them to get out of here? No. He has compassion for them. They were like sheep without a shepherd. They needed someone to teach them. They needed spiritual nurture. They needed something from God. So Jesus is going to make sure that they get it. And he teaches them and he ministers to them. He knew they needed his ministry, and he did it. Now the disciples in verse 35 see that it's getting late, and they're out in the middle of nowhere, and they must have been thinking to themselves, my goodness, how are all these people going to find something to eat? I mean, we have a challenge here. I mean, these people need fed. I mean, the crowd, we find out later, was a crowd of 5,000. That's debatable. It says 5,000 men. And if that means men, as in male adult people, there were probably wives and children there as well. There was probably a lot more than just 5,000. But let's just say there were definitely 5,000 men. Likely a lot more. I mean, feeding a big crowd is kind of a challenge. But I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a big lunch here at 11:45. There's going to be fried chicken, and also if you prefer cold cuts, and people are bringing all kinds of goodies and side dishes and desserts and this and that and the other thing. Now let me tell you something. The people, the connectors team, and I know I saw them scurrying in here yesterday, they will be today, that takes a lot of work to put that all together. And those of you that are bringing food, it's taken work for you too. I mean, this takes a lot of work to feed a crowd of, I predict anywhere from 120 to 170 people that we're going to have. We're talking about at least 5,000. That's a big deal. So what are the solutions here? What do the disciples say to do? Well, in verses 35 to 36, you see it there. Jesus, it's getting late. Send these people away into the villages, then they can buy something to eat. That sounds like a good idea. Let's wrap things up for the night and get these people out of here so that they can head off to the ancient version of McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or wherever it was that they would go in those days and get something to eat. Now, that sounds like a great idea to me, but that's not God's plan. In verses 37 to 44, Jesus has a different plan. And the way he presents the plan sounds totally insane to us. What does he say in verse 37? You give them something to eat. And who was the you? The 12, the guys that just said, let's get these people out here to the restaurant. Jesus says, no, you give them something to eat. Now that doesn't make sense from a human standpoint, because they said, shall we buy 200 denarii worth of bread and feed them? That, by the way, 200 denarii, I understand, is like 8 months of a man's wage. So really, you want us to take 8 months of someone's salary, 8 months worth of salary, and then feed all of these people. I don't know what you make or what the average salary is in Pennsylvania now, but take that times, 8 months, 8 out of 12, that fraction, that's 2 out of 3. I think I did the math right there. Take your salary times 2/3 and see what that's a lot of money. But that's not what Jesus has in mind. You give them something to eat. You see, his ways are higher than our ways. His ways are better than our ways. Isaiah chapter 55 makes that clear. And when God calls us to do something that doesn't make sense or it sounds hard, when we're following biblical stewardship principles, we need to follow them. Make no mistake, this is a stewardship issue. Jesus says, I want you to take what you have, what's been entrusted to you, and you give it to them to eat. That's what you need to do. And this is hard. It's hard for us as well. I don't know about you, but a lot of times when we think to ourselves, yes, I'm going to follow God's plans in stewardship, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be generous with that family that needs my help. Yeah, you hear a report, someone calls you, hear something in church, yes. But then when it comes time to opening your wallet and buying the food or giving the cash or filling the gas tank, it's like, oh, that really hurt. Why? Because I could have used that money on me, right? It's true. Even when it comes to causes, like when we go out here to feed my starving children, a lot of you participate in that, and it's a big event, and we go out there and do what we need to do. You wake up, the alarm goes off on Saturday morning. Oh, this is my only day to sleep in, and I'm getting up, and I'm going to drive here in the middle of March to the next town in Mechanicsburg and stand on my feet and pack rice and vitamins for people around the world. What's on sports today? You see? And when it comes to giving our time as well, oh my goodness, time is just such a, boy, that's a precious thing. It's hard. And yet we need to have the faith that when we don't want to do something or something doesn't make sense, we still need to do that. So how did the disciples respond to this plan that they needed to have faith and do something that was hard to do and didn't make sense? You give them something to eat. And Jesus says, how many loaves do you have? When they say, what, you want us to spend 2/3 of a salary to do this? All he says is, no. What do you have? Go and take a look, fellas. And they found out they had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. From John's account of the story, we find out they got this from a small boy. So how that happened, I don't know. I've often wondered, when were they like, come on, kid, hand it over? I don't know. The point is that's what they had in their possession, and that's all they needed to do, was to give that to the Lord, and then he took care of the rest, didn't he? What did he do? He gave them another job. Get the people into groups. They did that as well. They could do that. They could give up the bread and the fish. They can corral the people into groups. That's all they can do, and that's all they have to do, because that's all they're commanded to do. They do it, and Jesus takes care of the rest. He blesses the food. That's a point-in-time verb there in those verses, okay? In verse 41. And after blessing and point in time, then what he does is he gave the loaves and everything, the food, the fish, to the disciples, and they give it to the people. It's a continuous action. The verbs are different. The blessing is point in time. The giving keeps on happening for an extended period of time. So do you see what happens here? Do you see the faith factor? It's simply this. When God says, here's what I'm calling you to do with what you have, we obey, we do it, and then we let him take care of the part that we can't do, and even the parts that he knows that we would never be able to do. Feeding a crowd that big, you can't do it on your own. But with God, nothing is impossible. So as we go through this series, we're going to be talking about the fact that everything we have is a trust. Do you believe that? Can we put everything that we have in the hands of God? It takes faith to do that. We're going to talk about our time and how we are to give of our time, redeeming the time, for the days are evil. It takes faith to believe that giving our time to the Lord is worth it for the kingdom, and that he will bless. We're going to talk about being generous. We're even going to suggest the biblical stewardship principle of tithing and different things of this matter. All of these things can be very, very challenging for us. And frankly, things that maybe we don't want to do. But if we just have faith and we believe that God's way is the best way, it's not going to be a burden. It'll be a delight. Because we just do what we're called to do. And he will take care of the rest. Have faith to believe that as you go forth to be a good steward of what God has blessed you with. Amen.